think it's important. Because I was talking to David this morning, actually, and he was guiding me through some of the uploading into the website. But it was also clear that our friends in India had still not done everything they're supposed to have done. You know, so Pankaj had come back to say, yeah, well, we've done all the things you've asked us to. And, you know, we've done a demo for you. We can do another demo. But that was back in December and never picked up on it till now. The bottom line is they've not made the changes that David's asked for. So the site is still not really ready for, you know, changing, because otherwise we're going to have to just do it again. Now, I was able to sort of have a little skim around the site and just start to learn how to do my uploading and things like that, which is good. But it'd be interesting to hear what Pankaj has got to say, because David was saying, well, you know, if we struggle with it for much longer, he said, I'll have a go at it, because he's built websites before, but obviously he has a day job as well, which is all around, you know, webs and stuff, you know, the websites and stuff. So, you know, he would be prepared to do it, but it's not necessarily, you know, really, we paid Pankaj and team to do this.
Yes, absolutely.
So, you know, I think half the time I get the impression that Pankaj believes things have been done because he gets told by his team that things have been done, but they haven't necessarily been done. So anyway, David's lit a bit of a fire underneath him. I've kind of just gone back and sort of opened up, you know, just give them opportunities to go in and do what they're supposed to have done. But anyway, the real reason for having this sort of three-way Zoom conversation is really about exploring the ideas that Danny's got. And it was interesting because I mentioned this to David yesterday. And David is very much into NFTs and the DAOs that we've been talking about. You know, he sees this as a big time future. You know, he sees this, particularly for this year, for NFTs as being a big thing. So he's very crypto aware. And he's so, which is why I'm recording this as well, in part is just to share this with David, because, you know, he'll have some thoughts and questions of his own that will arise from this. So it's good to have another member of the team who has his finger on the pulse of the possibilities, if you like. Because to me, I know Danny's given me like the 101 on this, and I have a vague version, but I wouldn't ever go any further than saying it's a vague version at the moment, rather than, you know, really truly understand.
Well, with it being recorded, I put on my Bored Ape t-shirt. This is a £600 t-shirt. This just for the recording.
Bored
yeah,
Ape.
so
Wow.
The Bored Ape, yeah. Dave Chappelle and Eminem and Britney Spears got theirs this morning.
What is that? Is it like you mentioned a DAO? I'm not exactly sure what that is.
So there's a few different sort of things exploding in the market at the moment. What the Bored Ape Yacht Club is back in March last year now. They released a collection of 10,000 randomly generated. So an artist drew thousands of different traits. He drew teeth, hair, eyes, you know, hair, like everything, loads of different kind of traits. And then a programmer used a code to generate images out of those traits. So it's like it's combining coding with art creation. And that is the Bored Ape. And it's a collection of 10,000 randomly generated apes, which in March were £250 each. So a lot of people snapped them up because of like, oh, hell yeah, I want one of these. They're cool. It was the first kind of collaboration between code and art in that way. It's become basically it became the biggest project. It was what created this sort of the market last year. The cheapest you can buy a Bored Ape for now is about $500,000. So all of those people who got them back in March last year, they didn't just get this profile picture which proved that on the internet they were part of an exclusive club. They're now sitting on generational wealth as well, which is nice. So that's what the Bored Apes. So that's like a club, or you know, or a friendly cult, a really friendly cult. So they used all the money they made hundreds of millions, you know, from their initial sale plus secondary royalties as well. So every time a Bored Ape changes hands, the original developers get 10% of that. So it keeps topping up that pot and topping up that pot. So then they bought a yacht. They actually bought a yacht and sailed it down the Hudson River and invited anyone who owned one of these NFTs to come to a yacht party. And that's what these kind of things enable. They're basically a very tight community. And now it costs £500,000 to buy into this community and goes to these parties and goes to these events and have these friends like Dave Chappelle and Eminem and Britney Spears partying with you. That was basically what created that entire market last year, and it was amazing. What I'm wearing now is a Mutant Ape Yacht Club t-shirt, because what they did was they released these serums, and for every you could take 2 serums, and for each serum you generated a mutated version of your ape, which you could sell on for like 40 grand, like which they just gave you.
It's called a serum, you said?
Yeah, it was like but not like a real serum, and it has a picture of a serum. And if you chose to combine your picture of the ape and your picture of the serum, you generated a mutant, which was worth about 50 grand to start with. So it was like getting a free gift from the club. What happened after the Bored Ape thing was it proved that these kind of like blockchain technologies and merging the new technology with community and a shared purpose amongst people could be profitable. And the technology enabled you to do it in a whole new way. What they came about are things called DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations.
DAOs.
It's like the next generation of like an LLC. But if it's like if Amazon was owned by its workers, anyone who puts in gets out, basically like that. So the general gist of how to set one of these up would be a token launch. So you create a token. That would be your own token. You set a supply, X amount. Do you want it to inflate? Do you want it to how much control do you want over the tokenomics? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you have like a plan? Is it every 5 years you're going to release 1 million more to keep it healthy? You know, you come up with a token, and that's the Elevated Planet token. And that's basically, if you were to set up a store, or people come onto your app, or people come onto your website, they have to buy the tokens, and then they swap the tokens for the goods. So if they want a reading could cost 50 tokens, but they have to buy maybe like 100 tokens from Elevated Planet, and then they can use those tokens to then pay for a reading. They can pay for a t-shirt. They can pay for a month of Forever 49's thing, and it's using tokenization to build a business model. So you essentially, it's like Fortnite, it's like a video game. You want people in, you want them to buy X amount of points, and then you want to throw them your in-app purchases. That's how you set up, that's how you kind of work with the monetization of setting up the token. And that's kind of the first step in it, is setting up that token and having your ecosystem based on that token. So obviously, like at the beginning, you kind of want people to be able to put their card in and pay for a reading and also buy tokens as well. Like, we're not in the era of tokenization yet, but we're really, really getting there. So I want my plans like set in stone before we get there. Like, that's why I think about all these things now. So you want to kind of have both options maybe to start with. People can choose to pay the dollars, they can pay the Great British pounds, whatever. But also maybe having the chance to actually buy these tokens and pay for the readings in tokens as well is a good one. And then a DAO is the next step. So it follows the tokenization of things, because people can then choose to buy the tokens. Say I come and I buy 10,000 Elevated Planet tokens. A DAO would be set up, and in that case I would buy them off you, and then I would give them straight back to the DAO, which would be to the entity that is the DAO, which would be Elevated Planet. So I buy them off you and I give them back as, kind of sort of saying, use these tokens that I'm putting in the DAO to further build the community that is Elevated Planet, the business that is Elevated Planet, and so on. And your DAO you could divide various funds up within your DAO, like having a community fund. So say 50% of membership goes into a separate pot, and anyone who has chosen to stake their tokens back into this DAO to be part of that, they can choose to give it to themselves as a dividend if they want. They can choose to donate it to a charitable cause. They can choose to do whatever they want. But the point is, it would be a community governed fund, and to govern it, to get the vote, you have to have put the tokens in.
Well, that
That's
gave
that.
Bills. That's really sounds like a fantastic idea that could move us straight into the future of wealth and abundance. You know, it just sounds like we'd be on the cutting edge of something.
Yeah, it's and it's relatively inexpensive to launch a token. To set up your initial tokenization is not expensive at all, depending on what blockchain you choose to do it on. But I like it as in like I play a lot of Fortnite, which is a battle royale game. I love it. So you have like a default avatar. You come in and you can't just like pay for stuff as and when it comes. You have to buy V-Bucks. And so I have to buy like 10,000 of these V-Bucks to spend 150 on a stupid Stormtrooper helmet that I want to wear for an hour in a video game. But I had to buy 10,000 in order to get the 150. Obviously, that's very straight up. That's hyper capitalism right there. And then you don't even own your in-game asset. You know, when it comes to Fortnite, I'm a mug in that situation. What the blockchain does is it actually means if you actually buy that, whatever they buy off you, you know, that there's like a record of ownership. So like every time they had a reading, for example, you could give it so that they get what's called a proof of attendance protocol. There's an app already on App Store called POAP, POAP. It's called the Bookmarks of Your Life. And by putting in secret words or like scanning certain QR codes, you just get a little badge on the blockchain. It's there forever attached to your name that proves you were there at a certain time, at a certain place, or you have done a certain thing. I've seen a few sort of hypnotherapists in the space start to use these to track their clients' courses in progress. And, you know, that kind of logic you can absolutely apply to the healing and to the readings that you're doing. If someone chooses to come on board for like a 12-week sort of enlightenment course for better of, well, there's like tokens along the way, and that's how you tokenize the business, really. And POAP's already up and running if you wanted to download it and start experimenting with it. It's called the key is POAP, the Bookmarks of Your Life. It's really good.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I think you could really take it into not just being a business, but an entity that people are a part of. And then when it comes to putting on events and stuff like that, you can have exclusive things for token holders. You know, if you say, for example, if you bought in the first 6 months of Elevated Planet, you get a special entitlement a year down the line. You know, you got it rewards the community, and always give them back more than they're giving you. And it's then, from my experience, from what I've seen so far, is it then just everything starts to build in this harmony, because the more the community put in, the more they start to financially benefit from. And that's when you then step back and the community kind of can just does this. And that's exactly what happened with Bored Ape at the beginning, and the standard that has been set by now a lot of them have failed. Obviously they have, because what rushed into this space last year was a bunch of degenerate gamblers who liked the no regulations. So a lot of projects failed and there was a lot of noise. So I just focus in on like what the technology is capable of. Like when I'm trying to come up with a plan or think about setting up a DAO or like these tokenization things logically, it's like ignoring every news article I see about a $500 million flip of an NFT, or like something going to the, you know, it's burning out all of that and looking at the technology as is, what it can enable and how to like benefit from it. And that's what has sort of come together with this plan of releasing the tokens, using the tokens to build an ecosystem for a community, and then launching a DAO for that community to then have ownership of and begin to work in harmony with the business and the community. It then all becomes one circle and everything should start to work.
So what percentage of the population out there do you think would understand this at this particular point in time?
A very small right now, but that number is always increasing.
Yeah.
So
and that's one of these things you can imagine. This is going to increase, the knowledge is going to increase exponentially.
Yeah.
You have to sort of set the business up in parallel, right? So conventional alongside NFTs, DAO, whatever, and then kind of provide education along the way as part of the stuff that goes out there as to why it's a good idea. and how people are buying into the business, and in fact, effectively, potentially gaining for their future as well.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, you'll attract a lot of people who will buy, say, like I do this when I see new tokens on the market. I buy 10,000 and I put them away, because I'm like, if that business 3 years from now that's tokenized pulls through, I've got 10,000 of their very valuable tokens, which I could then hope to sell. I do that quite regularly, and there'll be a lot of people doing that, which will also, from a financial point of view, present itself as an additional fundraise upon startup. And that's what I've been saying to a lot of businesses is, instead of doing equity or reaching out to venture capital, do an initial coin offering. Because you're not giving away equity to shareholders, you're retaining full control of your business, but instead of going up for the money, you're going down for the money, which will also make sure you've always got the kick up your backside, because you've got a community of people knocking on your door going, hey, we're all here. As opposed to some silent investor in a suit who pops in every 3 months and goes, right, where's the green lines?
Oh, I feel like it's fantastic, because what that's doing is exactly what Elevated Planet, I think, stands for, is we're really looking towards the future. I mean, we're in the present moment, but we're building towards the future. So if the world happens to go in this direction, we already have our feet planted in that universe in order to grow. So I think it's a fantastic idea. I really like it. It gave me the chills. I just have no idea logically, I'm trying to like put it together. It's hard since everything is intangible and abstract. I realize a token is a token, but like all the semantics of it, but for the most part, I get the initial core of the concept.
Yeah. And it is an interesting thought, actually, because obviously, I mean, I worked in the world of currencies and exchanges for decades. The value of a currency is worth something because people believe in it, right? And NFTs are exactly the same thing. If confidence evaporates in it, it's worth nothing, because it is nothing, right? If people truly believe in it, it can be worth anything you want it to be worth, because that's the value people place on it. So that's the randomness of it. But at the end of the day, I totally get the fact that when we look at our own currencies, whether it's the dollar or sterling or whatever, you still have that level of intangibility about it. Now, you can wave a note around in the air and things like that and say, well, no, this is what it's worth. It's because people believe in it, right? And we'll stick a token value against anything they're looking to sell, i.e. dollar value, sterling value. So I suppose when it comes down to it, it's the same thing. It's just less regulated, and I suppose more flexible, because this is this is where it begins, right?
Exactly. It's literally following, 10 years ago, we used to hear all these stories of Silk Road and the dark web. And that logic was, you had to go onto the dark web, you had to buy 100 Bitcoins. And once you got there, you could swap your Bitcoins for hard drugs or children or guns or whatever. It's exactly that mechanic, but evolved and now adapted and improved and so on. Because that's how it started. Yeah, that's how it started years ago. That was the first big uses, was the black market, which also shows me that it's good as well, because criminals don't fuck about.
Yeah, true. But also it seems like there's a stock market feel to it, as if the stock market is moving. I mean, we're still going to have that, but it almost seems to me like it gives me the same feeling of like an internet, not NASDAQ, but something different, like springboarding off of that into something more accessible.
And there's lots of different things that prove that 2022 should be a decent year for this. So there's an app called Coinbase out there, which is amazing. It's everyone's first currency exchange, basically, a cryptocurrency exchange. It's how I bought my first ever Bitcoins. It's how I bought my first ever Ethereums. It's got 500 million users, because a lot of people in the world are into those currencies and investing in those platforms. But where NFTs are falling behind is NFTs, they only, OpenSea, which is the biggest market for NFTs right now, only gets 100 to 500,000 like not monthly, like daily users. It's a very, very small amount compared to Coinbase's X and tens amounts of millions. Later this month, Coinbase are launching their own NFT platform to compete with OpenSea, using and anyone who's already got a Coinbase account and has for all these years will get a free account, free setup, and a free NFT ready to get them started in the ecosystem. So straight away, this one company, Coinbase, are going to onboard hundreds of millions of people because they've already got a known, proven platform. You know, it's not like people having to come into a new thing and test something new out. It's kind of like something new that they already trust is offering them more. And that's gonna happen in the next few weeks as well. Nike and Adidas just bought some of the biggest NFT fashion brands, and Nike especially did a partnership with the Bored Ape Club as well, which is, if you and looking at the people who are in this, who are like starting businesses in the space as well. There's a lot of hip hop and a lot of sports stars, a lot of athletes, which is usually, for me, when looking at cultural trends, a good sign.
Yeah.
Usually huge cultural shifts always they either start in hip hop or they start in sport. That's how culture changes. And seeing it explode there is unreal. Like, there's NFT music's not a thing yet, but it is a thing in communities in that underground hip hop scene as well, because artists can drop an album without a record label, and their fans are the owners of the album, not the record label. And boom, you only need 100 people, and you've got a salary, you're set for life, you've got a community, you can do what you want. And especially in hip hop the hip hop scene, those communities usually extremely disadvantaged compared to everybody else. They're very much poorer. So that playing field of, you have to go through the system, work your way up, please these people to get this deal, and make this compromise and make this compromise, that it's non-existent anymore. And just looking at those cultural and sports teams as well. So I'm seeing it in sports teams. I'm seeing, back in the old days, a local sports team would go bust, and you'd have to write to, whoever owned the rubbish place, and say, oh, Tony, can I have £1 million to bail the local football club out? And then all of a sudden you've this big businessman who owns your football club who's no idea how to run a football club. In Britain, a few smaller clubs have started tokenizing. So they're about to go broke. They release X amount of tokens and they sell them to their fans. That money bails them out and gives them the what they need to get, and so on. And it saves the clubs. And then now the fans own the football clubs.
Oof.
This is so exciting because no one's talking about it.
Yeah, you guys seem already crazy with that football. So imagine if the fans start owning clubs.
Yeah.
Can't seem like, how are you going to control, like, your fans are already like throwing tomatoes at some of the players, and are they going to be able to make trades? Are they going to say, get rid of this person? I mean, how much power does the fan have? Let's say
in the football club, all decisions are now voted on by the DAO, which is now the football club. So any fans who buy into it, basically, now obviously that rule of if you go in and you buy 1 million tokens, you do get a few more votes than the other people. That still applies.
Right.
But generally, so for example, they were making some decisions on players. They put those decisions down to the DAO, and then your MetaMask wallet. You log into your MetaMask wallet and a little smart contract comes up, and it's like, would you like to cast your vote? And then you put your vote into the smart contract, commit it to the blockchain, so everything's visible. There's no funny business. And then right there you go. 70% of your token holders want to sell Sam. Sorry, Sam. Majority vote. And then so on. So that's how it's being governed, like that. Mass consensus of token holders. And it's interesting as well, because it's kind of got this Hyde Park Corner vibe to it too, in that someone from the community who feels really strongly about a player, usually in their lives, has either had a Twitter account or they've been like Jim Royal, sat behind a screen shouting at the TV. But now they can actually make their case for their football club and have it's the engagement. I've been watching it in sport and watching it in music, especially hip hop, and it's just where it's just that community ownership feel. It's proving itself time and time again before my eyes. I'm seeing a lot of them fail, but what the ones I see fail are because someone's rushed in for a cash grab. They think, oh, we can just sell them out these tokens. They sell all the tokens and they just close the website because they've made their money. There's a lot of that right now, or I'm seeing a lot of incompetence. A lot of people who they raise all these funds and then they don't know what to do with them because they're not businessmen. They're people, they're 20 years old, they're on the internet. They don't know how to behave, they don't know how to act, and that can kind of tank a project as well, which I've seen happen. So the benefit, like we were saying before, John, of like coming at it with like from this elevated planet is that it's building the business and the normal side of it, and this almost on the side merging in and fitting in as it can.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing there as well is like, you know, like you two aren't an incompetent team of 20-year-olds on the internet who are going to run off with a load of tokens. So straight away, it's a more attractive project to tokenize. Do you know what I mean?
And young people seem to be our audience in a way. I mean, I know there's going to be older people, but it seems like the young people are really on the wellness and clairvoyant trend, like leading that way. They're more apt to be impressionable to it than those that are older and more religious or just set in their ways. So I think this would really appeal to both sides of that. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I do like this. I think, you know, and recording this as well gives me the opportunity to go back through this and make some notes, and actually, and I'll share this with David as well, because, you know, he's got his finger on the pulse of NFTs and DAOs, and he's very excited about it as well. And he was just interested to hear what Danny's views on this were as to how it could apply. So sharing it with David as well, who also understands the world of crypto and all this kind of thing, it kind of gives us more strength to this as well. And I like the idea of shared ownership, because obviously one of the things that I'm aware of is that there's a lot changing on the planet, but I think it's also, there's some major shifts, and I think this might even be part of the major shift that's going on, i.e. you're getting away from, you know, the key ownership by one person at the top, sat there as the multi-billionaire, and everybody else just buying products, right? This could be, you know, something, and it does work well with the principle of Elevated Planet, you know, as something that is a community. And I love anything that helps us to establish us as a community. Now, we've got about 8 minutes left before we run out on this Zoom, because we don't have a subscription account as such. So, but my thought on it is this. I definitely think this is worth, you know, I think we clearly all believe in this. It's a question of how we piece this together. My suggestion is this: I will take this recording, I will put it down onto like onto a YouTube type of thing that I'll just share with us, but I'll share it with David, because again, I'm very interested to hear what his thoughts are. Now, there'll be some practical questions that then come from this, and we'll just have a first round of questions, because what I want to do is then start to draw up a plan. It says, okay, well, this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, because then we can go to Alex, for instance, Alex Moss, who can help us to develop this site, based off of what will then be a clearer idea of what we're trying to achieve. Because Alex was asking the question, you know, how do we want to link this into NFTs? And of course, at the time I said, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know somebody who does. So, and the fact that Danny knows Alex as well is obviously another thing that will help us. So, you know, as a team, then we can pull something together which will be coherent. And yeah, we keep our feet in the real world of cash that everybody understands, because that's a good starting point. But this will also appeal to those who really do understand this stuff, and maybe it will help us to raise some initial capital as well, and that enables us to do our first world tour or whatever it is we're going to do. But
Yeah, I think a good way that I have experienced in bringing on new people is entirely in the vocabulary. So like, instead of saying cryptocurrency, I will just say token. Instead of saying NFT, I'd say a digital asset. you know, and by changing your phrasing, you move it from technical to a lingo that people can understand.
See,
Yes.
this
So if
is,
I,
yeah,
when you
and this
tell
is
people you
where,
want to
to my mind, this is where you come in, Danny, because, like, you know, you're our interpreter, right? I speak my language, and I can put it in a way that I understand, and I will learn. I'm a quick learner with this stuff, because particularly with dealing in currencies and stuff for decades, there are certainly synergies there. But to me, this is the strength of you, is to be able to take sort of like a framework that we agree is the right framework, and for you to interpret it and say, okay, right, this is what those who are, you know, and David will be the same as well, because he, you know, he lives in this world. So between us as a team, I think we're pretty well covered.